Oof, there it is. Wasn't much earlier, a little foggy. A little foggy and a little frosty again. So it's going to be a few hours before I get that tank over here and open the shop doors and play underneath it. Because not only does it have to kind of dry and warm up a little bit, but I got to be able to open the doors and still have it warm enough for paint to dry in a reasonable amount of time. So, see, there it is. See if we can make it prettier. I can't tip the camera far enough to do too much more than that, but that's not bad. So, good morning, everyone. Out with the old, in with the new. Replaced the board on the front because the old one is actually mounted on the front side and the tank could move. And the back one was notched out for the set in like that. It was tight to the back, it wasn't tight to the front. So just made two new ones. Now it's kind of fugly, but I took measurements off the back one, of course. So, but I gotta skin a little more off of this, about another 1/16 of an inch. So I'm just gonna do it with flap disc rather than go back over to the saw and cutting on it. And number one's been cleaning up underneath here. Hopefully she's getting it pretty well good enough to get some paint on. And I don't know, when we did this, those were just regular 2x4s, not treated or anything, but they're still in there and they're good, at least what you can see of them. So I ain't gonna pull the tank to mess with it. And really the tank could have come ahead a little bit. You can see where it strap kind of leans that way, but unfortunately that's not what we're gonna do. It's gonna stay the way it is because that's where it is, that's where it's stuck. I don't need it moving. And I started working on my gauge cluster, and well, I had everything sitting there apart, and Becky played with that chair and knocked it all on the ground. I'm missing some stuff. But the worst thing, and actually it's not on this one, see the white strip in there? On the voltmeter, that's broke up on this one too, but on the voltmeter a chunk was broke out of it, laying in there against the needles. So I got a new set coming. They'll be here Saturday. I think I got enough to do in the rain till then. And by the way, yeah, started sprinkling right before we went in for lunch, and it's half dried off again, but still wet out. Tomorrow's supposed to be worse. I think later today is going to be worse. So yeah, so much for getting anything done outside. Oh, another reason for going for different gauges. I mean, I like a mechanical gauge, don't get me wrong. What I don't like is, like this engine in the old buggy had the stinking white plastic tube for the oil gauge. Well, white plastic doesn't hold up to sunlight. I don't know how many times we reset the end of it. And black plastic works better, but I don't happen to have any. Actually, I might, but I don't know. Either way, it doesn't matter. And temperature gauges, you're stuck with whatever length you got, which what I had I figured was enough. The temperature was going to have to go on the bottom of my gauge mount, but you know, I was going to make it work. This way, we're going all electric. Don't have to worry about it. It's all wires. Wires seem to last longer than the other two. So then I just gotta really need to get some different colored wires, because what we got, generally I use black for 16 gauge and blue for 14 gauge and whatever we can get for 12 gauge, and happens to be green 12 gauge and not a lot of 16 gauge. I don't like using much 16 gauge, but I really do need to get a few rolls of multicolored different colors so I can keep track of things on here. I'm getting too old to be chasing wires down when they're all the same color. But, we'll get there. Oh, I told you that we was gonna paint it. Can't say how good a job it is. Most of that will get covered in mud anyway. For most of that, it's the first time there's been paint on it. For a good share of it, the paint that was there had been there for 30 years anyway, maybe longer. I remember at one point redoing part of that carriage, or the saddle, but I really can't tell you when that was. So anyway, new end pieces even got painted just because we were there. Number one did most of it. I did part of the front here and where I could reach without getting underneath. I let her get underneath and find out what it's like. Because guess what? She didn't do any of that. She helped clean it up, but she didn't paint any of it. A whole different ball game. And I think I said something about my gauges. So hopefully Saturday I'll have that stuff to get it together. Hopefully tomorrow we will get this on. My plan is we'll lift it up with the skid steer. We'll just pick it straight up and take those rails and slip in. And if my measurements are correct, there's 2 holes in each one of those rails, a front one and a back one. And we should be able to just bolt it right up. If they're off a little bit, well, we're going to have to run a drill bit through it. But I got a little right angle drill that fits in pretty tight. I don't think it'll fit in the back because they were out to the outside, but the front ones are in there far enough. I think it'll fit. And we'll work it that way. Or I'll get mad and we'll oversize those holes on there so they line up with these. But I think we'll be okay. It ain't the first time I've measured and been close enough. So that's painted. Tomorrow Ron's supposed to be here, so I think between 3 of us we can get it. There's one thing we're going to have to do. Either going to have to take that valve off the end of that line, or might just be able to take that valve apart, because I think the fat part of that valve is 4 inches and that's only a 3.5 inch slot. So we'll make it work though. And then looking at it, I'm gonna have to mount the hydraulic pump up higher than I was expecting, but that'll be fine because it might actually direct mount. They can mount anywhere because there's no line's got to go to it. Make my brain work. The filter housing is what that hooks into. The filter housing might end up just right at the front of that rail. Not like there's not room for it. That'd probably be a good spot for it actually. And the pump can go on the frame like right behind where that creeper is. Keep them close together and hopefully away from everything else. Then that leaves me some frame rail to do something with. You know, gee, I got a hydraulic tank, a fuel tank, foam mark tank, 2 air tanks. Not like I don't have something to fill in some space somewhere. So we'll see what the heck happens there. I kind of like the foam mark tank on the other side. For one, where, I don't know if you can see it under here or not. There's a valve and a hose back there for a tank fill. It's on the left side. So if you put your foam mark on the left side, that's where all your watering is. And fuel tank on the other buggy happens to be on this side, which it doesn't matter. You know, carburetor's on this side, but the fuel line's actually on the other side. Fuel tank can go underneath the steps. I don't care. And the other thing I was thinking is that fuel tank was originally made, the one I think we're going to use off the old buggy was originally made to mount a 15-gallon sprayer tank on top of, which would be just fine for the foam mark. It'll work. And that would all set down underneath the booms and underneath the cab over there. But I still want to make it so we can access the engine without too much trouble. I don't really want to have to do that because I don't want to have to work on it, but if you have to, you got to get to it. So that's what I know. Not enough, but maybe too much. I actually thought about we could even mount the air tanks, if it stays out of the way, mount inside those rails for the spray tank. But I kind of want to keep them on the chassis itself in case we end up pulling the sprayer off. I don't know. We will see. It all depends on how things go together. And with that one, I'm just going to say it's been a day. I'd film some later, but here in about another hour, I got a load of manure for some neighbors that decided they want some manure. And by then, it's going to be too dark to film anything anyway. So I'll just, use my fancy carriage here and pan back away from everything so you can get the big picture. And there, just for Tony Walsh, that tank is green. It may not be John Deere green, but it is green. So yes, Tony, tomorrow, hopefully, there will be green on the buggy to keep you happy. But that's still Case IH red. And that's still close enough to Case IH black. All right, thanks for watching, everybody.